Hi, welcome to D10tion, where we pretend to know what we're talking about when it comes to D&D. I am your host, Tristan. My beard is most important to me, more important than my wife. To my left, we have I am Sam, and I'm digging a hole, diggy diggy hole, diggy diggy hole. And to my right, we have Brandon and my axe.
Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll take that. I'm good with that. I'm good with that one. There could have been many different ways to take that, and I'm glad I got that one.
Yes, I could have gone in very many directions. I could have just called you Dopey.
Oh. You did now.
Yeah.
If you can't tell what we're talking about today, we're talking about one of the staples of fantasy and Dungeons and Dragons.
Dwarves!
I am not a dwarf!
So yes, we're going to continue our conversations about the different races of D&D. As always, when we're talking about the races, we're not going to delve.
We're not going to dwell too much into dwarves because they can be very daunting.
Yes. With a lot of these races that we're talking, especially these main ones that we're talking about from the player's handbook, is they have long histories. These are, especially something like dwarves. Dwarves have a rich and very big history, culture, backgrounds, and stuff like that. With these videos, we're trying to do more of an introduction to these type of races to see if these are things that you would be interested in, or to help focus you if you're trying to struggle on what kind of class and race that you're trying to go with for a PC or even an NPC. So let's dive headfirst into dwarves.
If you didn't know, they're about 7 foot tall. wait, wrong one.
No,
wrong
that's the Peter Dinklage one from Thor.
Sorry, wrong dwarf. I was thinking different thing. So dwarves, as you probably can surmise, are short and stout.
Yes.
Here's their handle. Here's their axe.
Yes. So dwarves they come from kingdoms which are rich and ancient and just their halls
old.
Yes, they're carved into the roots of mountains, and they're usually war-based. They're very big warriors. They're warriors and art people.
Artisans.
Yeah, so they have a commitment to clans and traditions, and a burning hatred for goblins and orcs, because they have traditionally been very. Yes, they've been.
The orcs
common
and goblins
threats.
show up and go, "We want that mountain." And dwarves are like, "We already live here." And the orcs and goblins go, "How many of us? Oh, we have more. We're gonna take it." And then
the dwarves are like, "You can certainly
You
try.
can
We live in a mountain."
So yeah, dwarves are very, I guess, homey. They're
Yes.
when they find a mountain they want to live in, they make that mountain home.
Mountain,
Yes.
sweet mountain.
Right?
Yes, so like as you said, these are very much a very big staple of D&D. They've been there since the beginning.
It used to be when there weren't classes, but there were different classes, and their only race was human.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, the two classes that came out were elf and dwarf. So, if that says anything, your class was dwarf.
Right, which I imagine over time became the difference between like barbarian and fighter.
Yep.
And stuff
Things like that began to happen, and so dwarves have been with it and been growing as long as D&D has been growing. So their own lore is fantastically long.
Right, and as we continue to talk about it, if you've seen Lord of the Rings. And the dwarf Gimli.
Yep, he's pretty close.
He is very much. If you're looking for kind of a good idea of what a dwarf kind of is, that is probably the best example that you're going to find as far as a visual representation in something like a movie or something to really give you like, oh, I get it. That's what a dwarf.
That's
is
what a
all
dwarf
about.
does.
Yeah, because as you said, they are right around below 5 feet tall. They are short and stout. They are broad. They can even weigh as much as like a
human.
A human that is like 7 feet tall and still be like, oh.
They're hefty.
Yes.
Hefty.
But this is where they have it, where their courage and endurance are easily matched to large people. They are very much.
They stand as among giants as equals.
Yes.
Now they can look a variety of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have it be so your dwarf is a pale brown or like a wider pale because you live in a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
You can also have it be more like earth tone, and you can have things be like deep tan, or if you want to go with like a brown or clay.
Mm-hmm.
There's think of earth, any color in that most spectrum of the earth tones.
Right.
A dwarf can be. like skin color wise.
Right. And Sam, what about hair?
So for hair, they can range for a variety of different colors, typically blacks, grays, browns. Paler dwarfs tend to have a bit more reddish tones, a bit more coppery colored hair. And boy, oh boy, those male dwarfs sure do like their beards.
Yes, this is where they covet their beards highly.
Literally.
They are usually they're groomed, they're braided, they'll trim it to keep it neat. They adorn it with beads and even like metal caps and stuff like that.
They bling it.
Yes.
They bling it to be like, my beard's better than your beard.
I would go so far to say that the beard of a dwarf really represents like a more like societal like
it's
status.
It's to a degree.
Yeah.
Males will consider their beards almost like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Like, look, I went through this heavy battle and my beard still looks perfect. You're like, all right, there, pal.
Good for you.
The rest of them will be covered in blood and dirt, but like their beards are like, oh my god, I gotta clean it.
Yes.
So, they are very proud in their like appearance, especially towards other dwarves, which we'll get into that here shortly. But think of this start point as how they view themselves is how society views them, and they get honor and reward based on that.
Right.
Right. So yeah, this is one of those things with also moving on to the next thing is dwarves. They hold long grudges and they have a lot of memories because they can live to be more than 400 years old. This is where you'll run into, like, if you're playing a campaign and you run into a dwarf who seems to be a bit on the older side, they remember a world much different than the one you're in.
I remember one where maybe the dragons that were slayed in the past 100 years were rampaging around, killing everything. They're like, oh, I remember when the dragons came down and they took Billy over there.
Right, but then again, this is where you're going to run into a lot of that history. If you're looking to play with things like, some of the older dwellers that live in, some of the old citadels, and they remember certain wars. And of course, this is D&D lore if you're looking into it. So this is where you can definitely kind of delve into that if you want to have as like an NPC or even a PC, like a character that holds a grudge against something. You have tons of history to pick from.
Literally, you can pick, if you want to, type in, do dwarves hate? And then you can most likely have autofill figure out if you want your backstory to be like, do dwarves hate elves? Bing, there's probably something in dwarf history that they fought elves.
And I think because of their long lifespans, they also hold on to long-lasting traditions. Because they have these long lifespans, and so they carry on these traditions of their clan and their ancestry. So they really sort of hold on to them, and they don't tend to change that very much.
And through that history, they also are passed down skills and trades and their ideologies and like their work ethic and battle tactics are all passed down through their lineage and through their clan. So when you're making a dwarf, if you want it to be a relatively new clan, you can. If you want it to be one that's deep rooted for thousands of years and you're just the latest generation of this group, you can. Right. And you can do any mixture of those.
Right. And of course, with the age and the stubbornness and the long-term grudges or memories and traditions, dwarves are, like, as an individual, are extremely loyal. They're true to the word and decisive in action, sometimes to a point of being just overly stubborn. And
that's the classic dwarf for you.
Yes. Yeah. They're hard-headed. They have a strong sense of justice, and they're very slow to forget wrongs that they have suffered. Again, this is like where the grudges definitely are a big thing. And dwarfs hunt for vengeance can be like a full-blown thing and just feed into other, like, you get a couple of dwarfs together and one's like, I've been wronged by someone. The other dwarfs will almost feel an alliance enough to a point of like, then we will wage war on them.
We'll go fight this other dude.
It's like, whoa, that was easy.
Like, well, do we know each other? No, we've never met. But you're going to, we're going to go do it.
We're going to go to war because one dwarf has been harmed and
dwarf
our loyalty. So yeah, and that really bleeds into the fact that the clans and kingdoms of dwarves are very, very close, and there's a sense of bond there even without knowing each other.
And I mean, they also have a sense of bond through what they mine in the mountains.
Yes.
You got to imagine, I'm going into a mountain, which scientifically is going to be filled with a whole bunch of goodies for me, like gems and precious metals and other stones. So dwarven castles, if you will, are generally just rich.
Yes.
And rich not only in material wealth, but also in the things they make.
Yes. And that's something that there's no small thing about that. Dwarves are artists. Like, as much as they're proud of everything else, they're proud of their artwork. That's why, and this is even expanding outside of like D&D, or this is what helped feed into that D&D, is you see culturally, dwarves are always artisans. Like, even like something as like Norse mythology that dwarves are a huge part of. These are the people that are making all the weapons for the Norse gods. Like something like Thor's hammer is a huge thing. Odin's spear, like, and then anything else that dwarves tend to be in, they tend to be at the heart of it. They're artists, whether it's metalwork, stonework, tapestry, anything that they touch. They're like, it's got to be pretty.
It's got to be pretty. It's got to be as beautiful as I am,
Like
in my own dwarvish way.
Right,
but
like,
not. No, that's a different way of thinking about it. Because when we're like, oh, dwarves are more like, oh, grungy and everything, and elves are like, oh, we're so beautiful and pretty and pristine. No. There's battle and home life.
Yes.
They're completely different.
Absolutely. That's where you're definitely going to see, like, even if you look up things like dwarven armor or dwarven weapons, they're not crude. These things are
made to impress.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, oh, look, here's a dwarven hammer. It is going to be ordained with intricate, like, knot work and pictures and symbols and little bits of gold and everything. And this goes down to their armor. So they may be, like, dirty from mining, but as soon as they get ready to go to war, they look like knights. They are gorgeously ordained. And then they might end it covered in blood and guts and whatnot. They'll clean it off and it's be like,
Now we're good now.
and this is where you'll definitely see that their stuff is made to last.
Withstand. So that's most of the things that they find and do within the mountain. Now, if they have to find something outside the mountain, like, I don't know, cows, plants, other metals and things,
Spices,
things that aren't in the mountain, they'll happily trade. They're not like, this is ours, man, get away. They're like,
Right.
okay, so we'll meet you over there, and we'll trade over there, and we'll give you what you want, we'll give what we want, as long as we don't have to go on a boat.
No boat. Boat bad.
Boat's bad.
Right.
Which is such a funny thing.
They're
to
kind of.
think
I
about.
kind of think of them as like little homebodies. Like
Yeah.
they're kind of like those people that are like, well, we'll stay in our mountain in our land, but I don't really feel like going out. Like can you
I
guys
don't-
get this for me and bring it back?
Like, I don't want to... It's like a person who's like, I don't want to leave my town, but there's a really good store over there. No, I got everything I need here. If you go and find something for me, I'll pay you for it, but I'm not going there.
Right. Now, it should be said that you will find dwarves that have left the mountain and stuff like that. But again, so much of those dwarven ideals run so deep that if you find dwarves typically in other lands, they tend to still already be artisans, weaponsmiths, armorers, jewelers, and some might become like bodyguards or mercenaries. But they're still highly sought after because of their loyalty and their courage.
Yeah. And even if they are living far away from their homelands, they still sort of have this like connection to their clan, and they're still very, very much like respectful, and like they will know who you are if you're a dwarf, like, and what clan you're from and that kind of thing.
And the social statuses that come with it.
Right.
So just say you meet somebody from a different clan who's a higher part of their social status, even though you're both outside of your home clan area, you'd be like, oh, you're a higher ranking member, I'm going to be more respectful for you, rather than being like, we're on nobody's turf now. It's going to be like, hold on.
It's more like, my beard is bigger and mightier, therefore I am.
I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Don't hurt me.
So yeah, as we talk about dwarves that leave the mountain, these are ones that they tend to be motivated for treasure, for its own sake, for a specific purpose, or even out of altruistic desires to help others.
Because you're a dwarf and you're better than everyone else, so you need to protect those that are weak and squishy.
Right. Again, there's a reason they're sought after for courage and
Being
loyalty.
a mercenary.
Yeah.
Being a bruiser.
Or maybe even one of your dwarf gods came down to you and was like, hey buddy, I need you to do this thing for me, and you're like, you're my dwarf god, of course I'm gonna do
Right,
this for you."
dwarves
You're
definitely
literally, your
respect.
beard is the biggest of all of you.
You are a beard.
Big beard.
I am the god of beard. I am a beard.
What do you need?
May your follicles always be sprouting.
May your follicles flourish.
And it should be said that there's a lot of dwarves that really are heavily into their dwarven gods. There's a reason, like, was it when we did 3.5, it was like, yes, here are 3 gods to pick from immediately if you pick a dwarf. You have these. pick them.
Yeah.
Because they help motivate and guide your morality,
Right.
which is important.
Right. Because even like when it comes down to when a dwarf even trusts a person, they're slow to trust. They can get along with most races, but they tend to have times when it comes to people that live less than they do. Because like, do I even need to bother trusting you? You're gonna die soon.
Right, so elves, they're like, dumb elves. I mean, these are like the big other ones. Halflings are like, all right, they're nice, but they're nothing. And then humans are like, okay, if you find some good humans, and those humans have more humans, then I can have a whole lineage of humans that I am part of, and that I can be friends with.
Right, because I mean, they're like, if you get to take the time to know a human, and they'll be by, if they trust that human eventually, they'll be by that human on their deathbed. Like, even if they're like 101 years old,
Right.
like, I'm dying, and this young dwarf is like, it's been good knowing you, Fred.
I shall see you when I die in a couple hundred years.
I will watch after your family and their family and their family's families, and yes, they're very...
Right.
Humans and dwarves are the easiest to go, bing.
But like
Right.
dwarves and others...
Dwarves and elves, hate them. Dwarves and halflings, hate them.
Well,
Dwarves
'cause
and
I
elves,
think it comes down to dwarves appreciate people that try.
and humans have been trying for an awfully long time.
Humans
Right.
are like the epitome of try.
Because it was like, you'll see where like dwarves will admire the kind of dedication and determination that it takes for humans to try and give. Because if you have a human who's like, I'm gonna go fight that dragon person, dwarves will be like, I like that human.
Yeah.
He's got courage.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stand by his side, like, let's do this, human friend. Like, thanks. My name's John, but okay.
Yeah. Now, sticking along with like tradition and dwarf heritage, when we get to dwarven names, they're typically
Your parents don't even
given
get to pick it.
by a clan elder. So a clan elder will give the dwarf child their name, and that name belongs to the clan. So that means if that individual dishonors that clan name that was given to them, it's stripped away, and then by dwarven law, they cannot be given a dwarven name in its place. It's kind of interesting what kind of tradition that is.
So yeah, you could definitely have it. So if your character was part of a clan, and then through the story you did some boo boos, you could be like, "You're kicked out. I'm taking your name.
You are no longer Baron the Strong. You're now Steve."
Your friends would have to make up a name
Yes.
Or you would have to give yourself your own name and just hope
Right.
that's what people called you.
and hope that you can start your own clan, because that's the only way you're getting another name.
Right. So like, you have these are names that you'll see that are less complicated than that of like Dragonborn.
Oh boy.
I mean, because like male names are like Adric, Brothar, Dane,
Morrigan,
Thorin.
Flint.
easy. The
Right.
girl, the female typical names are like Amber,
Eldeth.
Meredith, like Idle.
And
Like-
then honestly, the clan names, a lot of them are kind of like take two words, put them together. Frostborn.
Right. This is where you really like. This is a D&D name.
Battlehammer,
Battlehammer.
Fireforge.
Brawn Anvil.
Yeah, Iron Fist. And this is where if you're trying, if you hear a name that sounds like it's D&D, it's probably technically a dwarf name.
Probably.
I mean, and some of them can be a bit more like, I would almost say like, what am I trying to say? Like more like Baltic in tone, or more like like Scandinavian in tone, like
Right.
Rumnaheim or
Right, this is where-
Rungart. Like,
Yeah, this is where you definitely feel like it's almost like a Viking name.
Yep.
but if
Like-
you want to go really simple, you can just call yourself Fire Axe.
right, like if you're
Why you call
looking,
Fire Axe? Oh.
I mean, that could just come down to just being someone who works in a forge and it's like, oh, my axes are red like fire. I mean, because this is where like if you're looking for more ideas for dwarven name, this is where definitely looking into stuff like Viking lore is a great deal. Because some of the stuff is simple. Because I mean, there's a reason like Leif Erikson is called Leif Erikson because his name is Leif and he's Eric's son. His dad was Eric the Red because he had red hair. And so I mean, very much if you have a dwarf and you're like, I don't know what to name him. Just you could pretty much go with anything. Like I am Bobson. My father's name was Bob. Or like I am Brown Pants.
As I.
Bobson Brown Pants.
Bobson Brown Pants.
Man, what a sad name. They can be
But-
super
but,
proud of it,
you
but
know,
in
you
the
can
rest of the world, they're gonna be like, "Oh."
You
this is
can put a
unfortunate.
little bit more thought into it than that,
Right.
but they really can be that simple.
Right. I mean, you can easily just put a weapon into a name.
Right.
Like I am Firehammer, Fire Axe, or like I am Stone
Ice
Fist.
Spear. Who knows? So, now that we've gone through, the basics of the behind the scenes of a dwarf, now let's look at some of the mechanics. Now, there are a few different sub-races we're going to talk about. Well, first we're going to talk about when you pick a dwarf, no matter what sub-race, this is the dwarf, this is your starting point.
Right.
And there are 3 main sub-races we're going to be talking about. There are other ones that are a little more niche that you can look at, but we're going to talk about the big 3.
Right. So we're going to start with what do dwarves get when you pick a dwarf, Sam?
So, your constitution increases by 2 because you are hardy.
Yes.
Who would have thought?
As we spoke, dwarves can live upwards to 400 years old. They mature at the same rate as humans, but they're considered young until they reach the age of 50.
How mad would that make you if you're like 49 years old and somebody's like, you're just a youngling?
Oh, you youngins don't know anything yet. We killed a dragon. I killed 3 by the time I was your age. And they lived anywhere for 400 years. Makes it easy.
Yes. Alignments, most dwarves are lawful, firmly believing in a well-ordered society.
Which is what they are based in.
Yes.
So it makes total sense that there would be lawful somewhere on the scale. Lawful good, lawful neutral, lawful evil. They're somewhere in there because you're lawful. You're going to follow the laws. There may be a moral gray area in those laws, but they're still laws.
Right. Yeah. And again, this is just the statistic. By all means, you can make an evil dwarf. By all means, you can make a neutral dwarf. It's all up to you.
They tend to be good.
You can always use your lust for shiny gems as part of a more greedy type of thing.
And we get into that. That's a whole thing.
Yes.
If you couldn't have guessed, their size is between 4 and 5 feet. No more, no less. And you're about 150 pounds.
Yep. You're still considered a medium.
Even though your walk speed is a measly 25 feet. So that may not, it's only 5 different than the Dragonborns and other races. It matters. Because if you're like, I'm 30 feet away, and you got to run up, you're going to be like, wait, no.
However, because you're hardy, your speed is not reduced by wearing heavy armor.
Which is great.
Dwarves like heavy armor.
Which is fantastic.
Right.
This is another thing that is important when making a race. Some of them, like dwarf, have a tendency to pick certain weapons and certain armor because that's what their culture is based in.
Right.
Like dwarves, heavy armor. Simple.
As a dwarf who have live underground, they have a wonderful life. They have superior vision in the dark in dim conditions, which means you get dark vision.
Who could have would have guessed?
Yay! So of course this is where you can see dim light within 60 feet of you, as if it were bright light, and in darkness as if it was dim light.
Which is fantastic when you're the only one that can do it.
Yes. Dwarvens also have dwarven resilience.
They have advantage against poison. If they are being poisoned because of the harsh conditions they live inside of a mountain and all the fungi and everything that grow in there, and somebody along the way had to be like, can we eat that? Oh no, try it. And so they have a propensity to be resistant to poison damage. So they have advantage on saving against poison, and they take half as much poison damage if they fail the resistance.
Right.
Which is so good.
Right. Speaking of that kind of thing, they have a proficiency with what items, Sam?
Battle axes, hand axes, light hammers, and war hammers, because those are the things that dwarves use.
Yes.
So I either chop or bonk.
Chop and bonk.
And then that also goes into tool proficiency with what items, Sam?
Smith's tools, brewer's surprise, or mason's tools. Which, by the way, Smith's tools and mason's tools just sort of ties directly into that artesian culture. And then brewer's supplies, because who does not like beer?
I mean,
Dwarven beer.
If you're gonna be stuck in a mountain all the time, you're gonna have some dedicated brewers. That's gonna be like, everyone have a good day at work. We find a bunch of stuff. Have a round. Right. They want it to be good. They just spent 10 hours digging through maybe a monster infested mountain.
Now, you brought up the mason's tools and stuff like that, so that leads into them having stone cunning. This is... what is it?
It's basically you make an intelligence or a history check on some certain part of stonework, and you're proficient in it because you live in a mountain and you
make everything out of stone.
Yeah, more or less. So you can use that proficiency and double your proficiency bonus on the check instead of just doing it normally, which is so good. Pretty nice.
And then languages. You can, of course... speak common, because you do trade, and then the most obvious one is Dwarvish. Because, you're a dwarf. They're full of hard consonants and guttural sounds, and those characteristics spill over whatever other languages they might try and speak. So if you're trying to speak like that's when people are like, "Oh, I'm a dwarf," and they have like that when they try and speak English with the statistic like, "I'm a dwarf, I am hardy, and I am stout, and I am." That type of way of speaking blends into even if your character can speak Elvish, you will speak in their words, a bastardized version of Elvish, but it's still Elvish. But that's one of the ones where some races can be like, here's this dialect, here's this dialect, here's this dialect. Dwarves go, there's Dwarvish, and I'm just saying different words.
Yeah. I mean, and this is where you'll see that, what is it? There's like that lineage of like Dwarfish is a version of Giants to some degree.
And some people believe that like Giant and Dwarvish come off of each other because of, history and everything. So you can either make it your DM or your you as the DM can either make it or your DM can make it so you don't understand Giant. But you can be like, okay, that means that, and that means that, and we can piece together. And you can spend time do an intelligence check or do some cross-referencing, and you can maybe figure some things out.
Because there are a lot of languages their script is based off of Dwarven. So you could, if your DM allows it, you could take some time to be like, well, I know this is roughly translates to this.
Like, and if they're speaking like you're going to have to, in the moment, to be like, intelligence check to see if I can understand what they're saying.
Right. This is kind of like where we've talked about, like, in-game as far as figuring out certain, like, things like Elvish and stuff like that. It's like when you see, if you speak English and you see something in Spanish, there's some words you're like, I'm pretty sure that means library. And you're like, so I know that that's involved in this sentence somehow.
And then, we're talking about a library.
Right.
So that's the language. Now we're going to get into the sub races. So once you pick dwarf, you can sub race. Mm-hmm. So that gives you the other ability score improvement. And there are 2 good ones and 1 bad one. And we're going to start with the bad one.
Right. And that is a gray dwarf.
It's also called a Draugr.
Right.
So gray dwarves, for those of you who don't know, live in the Underdark. There's the mountains. Then there's the Underdark. The mountains are above. The Underdark is way down below.
Right.
They are generally seen as more gray and more, I don't say grotesque, but a little bit not as clean, a little bit like thinner and wiry and a little more scary looking.
Yeah, they're wiry. They have black eyes and bald heads with the males growing long, unkempt gray beards. These are like the mole people of
They are not nice. They are, when we talk about being consumed by avarice and being like not on the scale of good, this is what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is where it goes. Because Draugr have many different ideas on what they want. They always want the shiny. They always want to more, and their emotions are based on the work and the toil they're doing, and they are very commonly known to go above surface, go into a town that's unprotected, steal a bunch of people, take them back down to the mine, and be like, "You're gonna work now," and then that's what they do.
Yes, they see themselves as having the purest
of the dwarven ID.
Right.
They're bad guys.
Yeah, so the bad guys. However, if you do get a chance to play one, you do kind of get a couple of benefits.
Which is nice.
Right. Such as you get an ability score of your strength going up by 1. You get superior dark vision.
Which is actually really good. Instead of 60 feet, 120 feet.
Right.
Yeah.
You can also get to speak, read, write, undercommon. So that goes up.
You also have resilience against being charmed or paralyzed.
And then you also get magic. So at 3rd level, you can cast enlarge or reduce spell on yourself once, and then at 5th level you can cast invisibility on yourself once, and you don't need material components for either spell, but you just can't cast them when you're in direct sunlight. Sunlight doesn't really have any effect on them once they're cast. You can't.
You can't do it, and
you're not used to the sunlight.
This leads into the one drawback of being a Draugr is when you're in the sun, you have disadvantage on attack rolls and perception that rely on sight. That when you're the target of attack or whatever you're trying to perceive, if you're in direct sunlight, you're pretty much just like, okay, I'm going to try and see. Okay, what's going on, guys?
Yeah. Because you are so used to the deep down darkness that being out in the sun is like...
Right, so that's why if they do come above the surface, it's at night.
And so if you want to try and make a Draugr elf that's trying to be good, or not elf, a Draugr dwarf and try and go against the grain, the first thing you should do, if possible, if your DM allows it, is try and find someone who can make magic items and get yourself some goggles.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Get yourself literally all it's based on sight. Doesn't have anything to do with your skin. So if you can find some smith or somebody that's going to make goggles that filter sunlight into dim light for you,
Get some sunglasses.
pretty much that's what you need.
Yeah.
If you get sunglasses, that goes away. If you find a magical item where your DM gives you something that doesn't that blocks out the sun's harsh on your eyes, you're set.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the bad dwarf.
That's not this bad one. So if you're a DM, if you want to make bad dwarves that are like gross looking, Draugrs.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about the hill dwarf next, and we're gonna save kind of like the traditional mountain dwarf for last.
Yep, that's the classic.
Right. So the hill dwarfs are
This is like the shortest that we'll talk about.
this is as a hill dwarf you have keen senses, deep intuition, and remarkable resilience. The gold dwarves of
Faerun.
is their mighty southern kingdom are hill dwarves. As the exile
Nidar and
history.
debased Klar of Kryn in the Dragonland setting.
Blah blah blah.
Pretty much
you
a
can
hill
read
dwarf.
into that.
Pretty much a hill dwarf is a very specific region,
Yes.
but it is very common to have ancestors that are hill dwarves and have a hill dwarf ancestry, especially in Faerun, which is a whole D&D setting.
Right. So this is where you'll also get the benefit of a wisdom score going by 1 up.
Which leans towards a cleric.
Mm-hmm. And you have dwarven toughness. This is where your max hit point increases by 1 and increases by 1 every time you gain a level.
So you just get free HP just because you're a dwarf.
Right.
And the other short one, the classic one. So we went a lot into the dwarf base sets, and like we said, this is more of just an amplify to add a little bit of different spice depending on what you want.
Right.
It's the classic mountain dwarf.
Right. This is where you're strong and hardy and accustomed to a difficult life in rugged terrain. You're probably on the tall side of being a dwarf and tend towards lighter coloration, as we've talked about, like different skin colors. They're the classic dwarf.
They're the ones that you already get the constitution for being a dwarf. This one you get 2 strength bonus. So you're now a big honking chunky boy
Yes.
or girl
Yes.
that just deals damage and can soak hits.
Yep. And you are also proficient with light and medium armor.
Meaning that you can wear anything
Yep.
and there's no downside.
Yes.
Yep.
Other than heavy armor being loud, but that's
Right.
armor. You can't stop that.
So the mountain dwarf is kind of like the traditional one that we spent a lot of time when we're talking about the history of dwarves and what they are. The mountain dwarf is ideally what people are talking about first and foremost. Because like you said, the hill dwarfs tend to be an offshoot of that. Like they've left and they're like, oh, now we live in the hills versus mountains. So they have different focuses. And you have some that are like, we're in the Underdark.
We're in the Underdark. We like to toil, and our emotions are based on anger and pain, and then we're going to go steal people.
Right. So dwarves, again, have such a rich history and culture and stuff like that. Definitely something, if you're looking more into it to add to it, by all means, look into it yourself.
Yeah.
If not, feel free to throw it out the window and you just happen to be a dwarf.
So what kind of dwarf would you guys be?
Would we be out of those 3?
Hill.
Mountain.
I'd be Hill for sure.
Gray.
Yeah, I figured. I was like, you're probably going to be a Draugr.
So as far as dwarves go, I know I've made a few. I'm sure you have, and
I've made one in my entire life, and he was a cleric, and that's why the only reason I liked him, because he was a cleric. I'll go on record right now. I don't like dwarves that much.
You don't like them?
It's just, they're just.
I'm so shocked.
Right?
Shocked and appalled.
How dare you? I just think that when people think about playing a dwarf, they stereotype themselves so much that as a DM, I can go, I bet you're going to do this. And then they go, I do this. And he's like, oh, imagine that. You did the thing that all dwarves do.
Yeah.
So they when someone, even if they're an older player, playing a dwarf is a callback to some, like, tradition. It's ironic because dwarves are all about tradition, but it's a throwback to some tradition where they play a dwarf as they think the dwarf should be played, which is how everyone plays a dwarf.
fair enough.
So it's never anything too versatile.
One of these days I'll have to prove you wrong.
Yeah, please do. Please make a dwarf that I'm not going to be like, you see a bar, I have a drink and go talk to the barmaid.
All right.
It's
All right.
Challenge accepted.
So that's your dwarf, the only dwarf that you're semi-okay with.
cleric.
What about you?
So early on in our campaign, Bards and Nobles, we came across a dwarf, and I don't remember his name, but what I do remember was we cut a curse mark off of his skin and threw his flesh and burned it, and that was my favorite dwarf. He took it like a champ.
No one knows where he is now.
No.
And just for nostalgic sake, and this is definitely where he's a stereotype of a dwarf. The first character I ever made was a dwarf from 3.5. His name was Thoric, and
What did he do?
He liked to headbutt doors.
Gee,
I thought it was
I wonder
funny.
what dumb DM let him do that.
With no consequences.
First time ever trying to hand a DM. Just sure, you rolled a headbutt the door. Okay.
No hit points taken away. Nothing.
So yeah, right there. A lot of people are like, I'm a dwarf. I'm just gonna do stuff like that. I'm brawny. I'm gonna do, which is not. You were learning.
Well, in my defense, it didn't matter that he was a dwarf that did it. It would have been any kind of tough character, I probably would have done it.
But you being a dwarf only let it be so it was more socially acceptable to do so.
Valid point.
Yeah.
So everyone was like, oh, the dwarf's headbutting. Haha, it's fine. If you were an elf, like, I headbutted, everyone would be like, okay, an elf doing that's kind of strange. Which would be interesting.
I am the biggest, strongest elf.
So, yeah, that'd be interesting. So, yeah.
Play a halfling. Just a gnome headbutting a door.
So yes, those are our dwarves, and that's the kind of the background on dwarves. Again, if you want to look into more about dwarf history to help further your decision if you want to play a dwarf, by all means. If not, you just want to play a dwarf because you like the idea of being, a short, tough guy or gal, that's also very acceptable. That's all you need to start off with helping.
It's a good baseline.
Yes. Dwarves, again, are very much one of the OGs of D&D. And if you're looking to just try and stay connected to the culture and tradition of D&D, by all means, it's a great place
Make
to
a dwarf.
start.
Make a dwarf fighter. There you go.
You're
You're as basic and as in tradition as ever made.
He said with no sarcasm whatsoever.
It's not a bad place to start.
It's not a bad place to start. I'm not saying that. It's just me personally.
Right. So,
Be gone, dwarf.
those are dwarves. And until we see you guys next time, D10tion dismissed.